The Weisses, Dr. Douglas and Mrs. Douglas, have been lovers all their lives and are now husband and wife. Douglas is your bride. Hello there! Your submissions this time around were really intriguing, I must say. I agree. As it relates to Joni Lamb Beyond that, it's about analyzing her public statements regarding submission and marriage critically, taking into consideration both her own and those close to her experiences. Therefore, we will endeavor to carefully analyze this and think about the issues that this event brings up throughout this comprehensive review. I agree. You are aware that there is a relationship between religion, public life, and private behavior. Specifically, there is a relationship between biblical marriage and divorce and the concept of submission. No doubt about it, you should be aware that the position taken by this text is fairly simple. One great thing is that it doesn't hesitate to investigate any differences. To sum up, it describes the biblical principles of marriage and then analyzes those principles in light of significant events in her and her husband's experiences. I think it would be helpful to step back and examine this issue from a new angle. The story supposedly starts with this remark attributed to Joni Lamb, in which she tells Susie Lamb that she is not here to serve God. Yes, exactly. Still, it might appear a bit strange to serve someone today who isn't familiar with all the complexities that are present here. We need to know how much clout or controversy a comment like that could generate. Based on what we know about the source material, the most interesting part of that comment is how it relates to one particular reading of biblical submission. Yes, exactly. This study lends credence to the idea that Joni Lamb emphasized the importance of a woman's service as her principal role in a marital relationship. Therefore, we will go into more depth later on, but the possibility of conflict arises when this focus on submission and service is compared to her own life decisions. Additionally, I think it's crucial to note that there are different schools of thought within Christian communities when it comes to the concept of biblical submission. Yeah, that's right. As a result, there is a spectrum of views, from those that portray power in a hierarchical structure to those that emphasize equality and charity. The inserted text seems to be operating according to a specific, perhaps more conventional, interpretation of this phrase, given this. All right, because of this, the story shifts gears to focus on Joni Lamb's first marriage to Daystar TV network creator Marcus Lamb. The goal is to deepen the previously introduced idea of how one's personal life affects their public image. Furthermore, they were true partners in the establishment of this ministry. Yeah, that's right, they collaborated on the writing of Daystar. As an added bonus, their dynamic interplay had a major impact on the network's identity. The source material does recognize such a shared history, along with the substantial ways in which they all helped the group grow and gain renown. As the article progresses, it delves into this particularly trying period, coinciding with Marcus Lamb's public confession of having an affair. Even though this was the case, the text stresses that Joni Lamb still decided to live in the marriage. Yes, exactly. Furthermore, some people may see this as a cause for division based on their interpretations of the Bible's teachings. I agree. Plus, that specific point is heavily emphasized by the source. What they mean is that Joni Lamb stayed in the marriage even though Marcus Lamb admitted to having an affair before. This choice could be perceived by some as a strong commitment to the idea of a lifelong marriage. Despite this finding, the narrative and analysis take a somewhat different path. We move forward in time because of this. Yes, exactly. The inquiry also reveals that after Marcus Lamb passed away, Joni remarried Doug. Furthermore, the source seems to imply that this was a relatively short duration. I agree. It would seem that this is an essential part of the whole critique. Yeah, that's right. Specifically, the source material highlights the duration between Marcus Lamb's death and Joni Lamb's marriage to Doug Weiss. Yes, exactly. Also, there's an implication that this timing is strange and causes problems. I agree. When seen through the lens of the biblical teachings on marital stability, this becomes even more apparent. On top of that, I think this kind of taps into that common tension. This could even be found in passages that address marriage in the Bible. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. You have the opportunity to make a lifelong commitment. In addition, there are the chances for new friendships and the realities of being a widow. The pasted text clearly leans toward the former when it comes to the criticism. All right, not only that, but Doug Weiss himself takes some heat for his role in this piece. Yes, exactly. The article also mentions that he is a marriage counselor who has spoken out against divorce. Things begin to take an intriguing turn now. I agree. A divorce is mentioned as something that Doug Weiss has gone through in the text as well. Yes, exactly. When well-known figures are under investigation for actions that seem to contradict the beliefs they have publicly stated, the situation becomes more convoluted. This makes one wonder what the expectations and demands are of people in authoritative positions. I agree. One of the main points of the critique is this. I agree. Doug Weiss's public role as a marriage counselor who discourages divorce stands in stark contrast to his role in the public mind. Yes, exactly. Plus, he knows what it's like to go through a divorce firsthand. Yes, exactly. Furthermore, the audience is led to believe that this apparent disparity is a major source of undue concern. In light of these results, it is clear that the source is essentially posing some very simple questions. I agree. Giving you something to think about, it asks if Joni Lamb's remarriage aligns with her teachings on biblical submission and lifelong marriage. Yes, exactly. When considering his profession and public statements, does Doug Weiss's divorce raise any valid concerns? That much is certain. The book presents these issues as crucial and encourages a critical evaluation of the consistency between the public teachings and the private lives of these prominent figures in the Christian community. Apart from that, it makes us think about what we anticipate from people in charge. Beyond the scope of this specific situation, the analysis goes even further. Furthermore, it appears to suggest that the Christian community's leadership is involved in a larger pattern of hypocrisy. Furthermore, the premise is that leaders can seem to impose strict rules on their followers while, in reality, they may be enjoying more personal freedom. I agree. My take is that this could point to a possible dynamic in which some leaders interpret or apply principles in ways that seem to fit their personal circumstances, while simultaneously expecting a more rigid adherence from those they lead. This could be seen in relation to a more holistic understanding of society dynamics. In this setting, the idea of leaders rewriting their own stories is fascinating because it raises the possibility that there is a disconnect between the public narrative and the truth. Furthermore, the author seems to be expressing the view that these apparent inconsistencies are becoming more apparent and that standards of behavior should ideally be uniformly applied irrespective of one's position through the choice of words used. This idea is absolutely communicated by the source, which is that people are looking more closely at how their leaders' words and deeds line up. This highlights the growing sense of critical engagement among followers and the importance of religious leaders being more genuine and honest. The article concludes by outlining some major points that the author has considered. The importance of living in accordance with the teachings is highlighted by this. Furthermore, it raises the question of accountability for the private choices made by Christian leaders. In addition, the situation stands out because it involves you, the listener, directly, which makes you think about these complex issues on a personal level. Also, it makes us think twice about the standards we set for religious leaders and the responsibility they have to put into practice the principles they preach. In conclusion, the pasted text highlights the seeming inconsistency between Joni Lamb's public teachings on obedience and marriage and her subsequent marriage after her first husband died, which is necessary to summarize what we have learned. In addition, it sheds light on a comparable situation involving Doug Weiss, a marital counselor who advocates against divorce but has been through it himself. In addition, the research highlights the possibility of Christian leadership having double standards in these instances, and it calls for a stronger connection between words and deeds in every way. The investigation is centered on the apparent discrepancy between stated convictions and experienced reality. Be advised that the aforementioned source material does not provide answers, but rather raises these questions and offers these insights for your consideration. While we're on the subject, I have something important to say that you should consider. What does it mean for communities and individuals when well-known people, especially religious leaders, are questioned about how much their personal beliefs match up with what they say publicly? This question is answered by the study that we have reviewed in this source. Is this level of responsibility? On the other hand, is there a limit to how far it can go? I agree. In this respect, there are numerous factors to think about. Yeah, that's right. Furthermore, we hope that this comprehensive analysis of the topic has provided some stimulating ideas for further consideration. Yeah, that's right. Your presence here is greatly appreciated. I agree. Your submission is greatly appreciated. A truly commendable one. Something that captivates me greatly. I agree. To rub salt in the wound, Ed, we strive to provide an unbiased viewpoint on this subject, and it is extremely delicate. To put it simply, we hope that everyone will listen to this without preconceived notions and form their own opinions based on what they hear. Yeah, that's right. Take stock of what you are learning and think critically about it in every way, along with coming up with your own ideas. I agree. We are also happy to receive any supplementary materials you may have that provide a different perspective on this issue. We do, and we strive relentlessly to learn about different perspectives. If you could let us know in advance, we would try our best to include it in an upcoming comprehensive review. Yeah, that's right. I appreciate you taking the time to listen once more, and that will be our last encounter with you. I look forward to our next meeting. Leave it.